good late afternoon. Three videos, Tom?
Yeah.
3 in one day. Well, that's not uncommon for me. I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is I don't think it's the sensors. And I found out, I followed Polish Hotdog, Steve, suggestion, as well as a few others who said the same thing. You got a bad diode in the alternator. Alright, I had asked Steve, I haven't checked my computer recently, would I be able to disconnect? And at what point would I disconnect? And he said you should be able to pull the field wires. Well, I couldn't get those off. They would not come off. There must be a nut holding them on. But I did take the main stud off, although I tried before and it looked like the whole thing was turning. I says I got nothing to lose. I disconnected the alternator, which this stud right here, I don't know if you can see it. I don't have a flashlight. The sun is going down. Can you see that little nut there in the camera?
I can see it.
Okay, then the camera can see it. All right. I disconnected this. I looked at some of the links that one of my other viewers posted about this problem with the speedometer jumping and all that, and they said it was the alternator most likely. So I disconnected this, and I was very careful, and I wrapped it with a cloth so it wouldn't short out into anything, although there's a plastic boot, a rubber boot on this anyways, but you have to be careful, you take it off. And I said, well, I got nothing to lose. I put a 1/2 inch, not a half, a 3/8 socket and ratchet on here. I had a 1/4 inch before and I couldn't move it. I was afraid to go too hard. I'm afraid to round it off inside and have the whole thing turn inside. But I figured I have nothing to lose, so I went back out here a little while ago and disconnected this. All right, made sure it was away from this. The car was off. Then over here, I connected up my 50 amp boost charger. It's a Boost 50 amp that I got at Jewett City Flea Market a couple years ago. I put it across the battery and put it on charge, okay? And it wasn't charging maybe about 5 amps or so. Maybe a little more than that after I started the car. And then it went up a little bit. Okay, I put that on there. Went into the car. After it was running, I put on the brake, put it into reverse. Needle stayed right at 0. Put it into neutral, stayed right at 0 because it used to go, up and down. I put it into drive. No clunking. Needle stayed at 0. I made the test several times. I went through all the gears and I shut it off, started it up again with the battery charger on it, and it's still disconnected. And perfect. No thumping, no clunking, nothing. So the suggestion about the alternator being bad is 100% correct. So I want to thank Steve and a few others who suggested that, and I appreciate that. I am sure glad that I got to it. It was bothering me. I says, I got to give it a try and try to disconnect that thing, even if I break it. That would explain why I got that horrible noise, even though the car was in park, and I did not put it in drive or reverse when it was making that noise. So I wouldn't think it would be the transmission making that noise if you're sitting still. So even though the noise went away, and why it made it, I don't know, but it was super loud. So the answer is the alternator is bad. So I connected it back up again now, and I tried it, and back the same thing again. The needle was moving, and so we know that the problem is here, okay? So now I got something to work with. I'll call that guy tomorrow and say, forget the sensors, we got a bad alternator, and I'll have him do that if he wants to do that. I don't think he went out and bought the sensors. I hope not. That would be a problem if he bought the sensors ahead of time. He was supposed to have me call tomorrow, which I will do, and instead of doing the sensors, do the alternator. Now it's $240 for the job that he was going to do on here with the sensors, both of them, and the labor and everything, and the tax. I am sure that this will be more, because with my luck, the alternator will probably be $200 or close to it. That would be my luck. But anyways, it's back to normal. The idle is back to normal. There's no more, there's a slight surging at times. It's not doing that anymore. So it's obviously, when I got those readings on the scope, it was correct. I have not yet answered any of the comments on the latest video I put up there, but this is an update on the update, and as it stands, we're looking at a new alternator. We don't know what that's going to cost, but it sure beats having transmission work. Motor mounts, which would be a big job. Motor mounts are fine. I mean, I put it in gear and I kept the foot on the brake, and there's nothing unusual about it. It didn't go kaboom or anything else. Everything was smooth when this alternator was disconnected. The only thing is, my meter that's in the cigarette lighter, when the alternator was disconnected and a battery charger was on here, it showed 12.6 volts. In other words, it was not charging. The cigarette lighter does not, I guess, get the charge directly from the battery. I don't know. I think it would be. It goes on with the switch, of course. Not like the old cars, it's on all the time. So I was looking at the meter while the alternator was disconnected, and I should have had 13 or 14 volts on that meter with the battery charger on here, but I wasn't getting it. But I was getting it over here. I was getting about 14 or so on the battery charger, but I was only getting 12.6 volts on the cigarette lighter voltmeter. Okay, so when I connected back up the alternator again, took the battery charger off, started it up. Of course, the speedometer was acting up again. Then I was getting my 13.4 volts on the meter. So that's unusual. I thought the cigarette lighter would have the same voltage as this. But regardless, that's not the problem. The problem is I solved the problem thanks to Steve and anyone else that has suggested the alternator. I want to thank you guys for it. I want to thank everybody, because something like this is hard to diagnose unless you're right here doing it. And you know, sometimes you have to shotgun it and replace this, that don't do it, and you replace that and that don't do it. Sometimes you have to do that. But I was able to check this, but never working on something like this, especially on these newer cars, I was very unfamiliar with how these things come out. And this here came off after I got the nut off and everything. Not a problem, but I couldn't unplug the little plug underneath it. It would not move, and I think that's the field wires, according to Steve. So I had to remove this end. So you have to be very careful. Fortunately, the fans are plastic, so if my wrench hit it, it wouldn't be a problem. But I had to be careful not to let my wrench hit the dipstick, because that's metal. Because yes, a lot of current can be drawn through that, you know. And I had a lot of other good helpful hints on the first video about this, and I appreciate everything. So I'm going to let Tommy put this thing together. We found the problem. That's the name of it, Tom.
Okay.
Thanks to some of my viewers. We found the problem thanks to some of my viewers. Okay? I want to thank all the viewers for helping me and giving me all the suggestions, so don't get me wrong, but it just happens to be that the alternator was the problem. Thank you once again. That concludes this video. Thanks for watching.